All right, we are recording. So, Ms. Valentina Gomez Bravo, welcome, welcome. So I met you way back when AdFed Houston, right? Yeah, AdFed Houston approached me to talk. And then we met, we bonded, and you were like, hey, I am also a professor. Will you come speak to my class? And I was like, sure. And now it's all come full circle, and you are speaking to my students. Also, it will be available public on the YouTubes after this. So hang on one second. We got someone coming in a little bit late. And hey, Chrissy, can you go ahead and turn off your video for me? Thank you, thank you. Okay, all right. So I'll stop talking. Here we go. First of all, man, when people are like, where'd you grow up? I'm like, I grew up in Indiana and then I moved to Colorado, and that's like all I got. And, and then I ended up in Arkansas. You tell me your history.
I've lived in all the places, not that many though.
like it wasn't just, you grew up in a different country. You're like, then I went over to Germany for a while. So share, please.
It was the best. So I'm originally from Venezuela. I was born in Caracas, which is our capital city. I moved within my country several times. And then I went to Germany for a summer. We did a student exchange program in my high school. We had a bunch of students come in from Germany, stay with us for about a month and a half. And then it was our turn to go to their houses but we stayed longer because our summer was longer. So we stayed a whole 3 months over there, which was amazing. We spent a few weeks in Berlin, and then we moved to Metternich, which is a little town like 30 minutes outside of Köln. And that's where they all lived. So we stayed there for the rest of the time. And of course we traveled by bus. We went to Netherlands and, everything super close. So you go on trains to all the places. I was
about this train and go to this other country. It's just
yeah, exactly, which was awesome. So I think I was around 16 at the time. Then came back, finished high school, then went on to college back in Venezuela. And then when I graduated college, I moved to Argentina to do my master's. So I lived in Buenos Aires for 2 years. I love that place with all of my heart. And then I went back to Venezuela to start teaching because my old college called me and said, we want you to come back and teach, which was super insane to me because I was like, I have 0 patience in life. How do you want me to teach other humans? But if all my professors were so insistent, and they were all very insistent, I'm like, well, if you believe in me, I'm what I am because of you. So if you believe in me, I'm going to give it a shot, which I did. And I loved it. I told them I was only going to do 1 semester. I'm like,
you caught the bug.
I'm not committing to anything else because I don't even know if I'm going to like this. And not even half the semester in, I was like, yeah, I'm in. How many more classes do you want me to teach? It was the best. So yeah, and after that, I stayed in Venezuela for a few more years. And then I moved here. And I've been in Houston ever since.
And so you've been, was it 6 years you've been in Houston? Is that, or?
I would say it's, March 7 already. I missed my own birthday. It's like a big deal to me, like every year. But I missed it this time. I don't even know what day it is, but yeah, 7 years now.
Well, actually because of the whole, what day is it right now anyway? Is it still March of 2020? What's going on? How has the new normal affected you? It's good because, for example, I got to speak to your AdFed group for like no money. You're speaking to me for no money, thanks. What is the good and the bad of the new normal?
I would say business-wise, it didn't affect me that much structurally. And what I mean by that is since I started my agency, we've always been a digital agency, meaning we live in the internet. So we don't have a physical office. We only had it for a year and such, our first year back in Venezuela when we started. We had our office and we decorated it and it was awesome. And then a year in, I moved. So I didn't even get to get the walls dirty over there. So ever since we opened here in the US, we've always been 100% online. So I didn't have to change anything on the structure of how we operate.
Yeah.
The only thing was now I didn't have to beg clients to not meet in person because I would always have to oblige. They're like, yes, I'll go meet at your office. And then, stereotypes here, which were people expected me to have a physical office to be a legitimate business. So I rented an office that I never used because I never needed to use it. So I did one of these virtual offices so I could have an address and a conference room that I could rent for meetings and such for people that needed that.
Yeah.
And I fought with that idea for years. It made no sense to me economically.
Right. It was like money thrown away.
For me, yes. But I mean, people here in the market here sort of needed that, at least in the beginning. They didn't believe you were a legitimate business if you didn't have a physical office. It was weird. And, I've been using Zoom for 7 years. It's not.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, this is no big deal. Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, yes, definitely. And now people were like, yeah, I will learn how to use Zoom now. I'm like, yes. So it did help me in the sense that I didn't have to educate that much on that end. And of course, helped me keep my costs down. But the reality of clients having a lot of issues and staying open or not, or having my team members get COVID, or, the fear of that did affect, the agency itself, and of course, revenue and the amount of business that we did last year and all that good stuff. But it did open people's eyes to the reality that we need to be online. So it did also help me finally convince or help a lot of people see that this is where life is going. And I've been trying to tell that to people for years. So now it just made my job a little easier on that end. On the good side, though. On the bad side, I mean, it's been a challenge for everyone, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, business-wise. It has been really hard for everyone. So we did have to adapt, and we took our ever first group vacation this year. We had never done that before, where everybody left for vacation at the same time. That never happened. We usually always stayed open. Somebody stayed working, somebody took vacation. But this year it was so exhausting for everyone. And, having some of the people sick and the stress levels were through the roof. So we closed during the entire month of December. We needed it. So
wow.
We had never done something like that before. But the team needed it. I needed it.
Yep.
You don't realize how stressed you are until people start getting sick, not from COVID, like other things, stress related. And I'm like, this has to stop. It's been a very weird year. And we just did it. Everybody needed it. And it was the best thing ever. So
that, what you just said leads me to two questions I'm going to say now, just in case. One is, I want to come back to this one, which is about service and mentorship. We're going to come back to that one. But first of all, I assume you're talking about the Bunker 58. Is that tell me.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm assuming people know what I do.
But I'm letting them know. And tell me, but I am also, like, I know a little bit about it. I don't know if it's a one-person shop that you talk like you're a we, but then I'm like, no, you're a we. And you said you started in Venezuela. Like, tell me, how'd it go?
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Back up. Nobody knows who I am. I forget that sometimes. I have an agency. It's not an agency. It's a branding studio. It's called Bunker 58. We are a branding and design studio. We specialize in creating and developing brands. So we work with entrepreneurs, business owners, professionals, startups, influencers that want to monetize their gifts and make a difference through their business, whatever that is, even if that's a professional career in a company, but you want to build your personal brand. Our goal is to help them get there and also make a difference in the world while we're at it. So we do everything from brand design to brand strategy, website development, social media management. So every stage of the brand building process we touch on. We started in Venezuela. It'll be 8 years in May. We opened there. stayed open there for like a year and so. Then I moved here. And when I say we, it was 3 of us in the beginning, our lead designer, my business partner, which handled all of the social media part of things, and me as the manager of the company. Then I moved. Then we added more people to the team. Then they all started moving too. So at this point, only one of us still lives in Venezuela. Everybody else lives elsewhere. So we all work remotely. They live in different countries. We have different time zones. We have different languages. So it has been very interesting because each and every one of us has had a different experience and lives in a different country now. So whatever we learn from the experiences that we have, we bring into our work, which has been a unique opportunity that we now have. And the entire team's bilingual. So we do everything in English and Spanish. So it's going to be 8 years of that this May 1st.
Yeah.
And we've added more people to the team that I've met here, which has been amazing. And all the contacts that you make along the way and projects that come up and new people that you meet. So it's been very exciting. When I started, it was 2 of us, then 3, then my partner left and it was just me with my designers. And then we've been adding more people, which has been awesome.
Sorry.
And we just keep growing and adapting to whatever the market kind of pulls us in different ways.
Wow. It's just so, I mean, like, and what kind of, like, when you say just, casually, other countries, like, what other countries?
Oh, so my lead brand designer, she lives in Chile. My lead developer lives in Hungary. I know, it's so very strange. And our second lead developer or web designer, he lives in Panama. And then we have our main social media manager in Venezuela still. And the rest of the team, like my SEO guy is here in Houston, and our 2 other designers, one's in Orlando and the other one is here in Houston as well. But we've been, we had another guy in Colombia, but he's been taking a year of relaxing before coming back and doing other things. So it's been interesting. And of course, to see everybody, build this whole new life in a whole different country. We were all in one place at some point in the beginning, but it's the same team since we started. It's the core same team with new people that we've been lucky enough to add to the team, which to me is priceless because it's very hard to find people you can trust that actually do good work. And I can go to bed in peace and I know the work that's coming out is amazing and I don't have to micromanage anyone, which is magical. And we trust each other completely. And at this point, we kind of read each other's minds when it comes to projects. So it's awesome.
That's so amazing. So then my next part with that is talk about multicultural and I would assume multilingual, even though you're saying it's mostly English and Spanish. Is it? Yeah. But is it? So I've seen so many things that you've done for mentorship for the Latinx community in Houston, and I guess, well, then also globally. I know a lot of your stuff are like in Texas and the world. How, and you specifically said, that you just, let's see, you're a multicultural creative brand strategist, an educator, a speaker, and a social activist. And also, so you've got a lot of activism in there. You've got a lot of care for the service for the world. Tell me, share with the students, like, what is it that you do? What is it that you find important? That's a lot of hard work. It's a whole lot of hard work.
It is a lot of work. And most of our volunteer work is volunteer. But it is very important to me because I've always believed that, how people say, oh, it's just business. And that was the way people used to do business before. I've never agreed with that statement in a way or another. Every business that I worked in, every agency, because I used to work in big agencies. So I was part of the creative team of, other brands and other companies. And I always found myself trying to fix things. And I don't like to say fix, but trying to make things better. Like I always found myself challenging whatever was. I always thought it could be better. Nothing was ever good enough. So I found myself in that space all the time with every agency I worked with, every account I worked with, every client I worked with. And I was never able to really do anything about it because I always depended on a boss, a client, to convince them to do something.
And do you mean like
So,
specifically, is it the aspect of like, is it as simple as something as there's no diversity in this photo, or something like you could do some philanthropy here, or is it something else?
both. It was always that, or, it felt so transactional and commercial and money related. I don't see brands that way, or I wish more people would see companies less in that way, because yes, it's about making money so you can stay open. That makes total sense. Nobody's in business to lose money. But at the same time, businesses are run by people and are here to serve people, whatever it is that you sell. So the people component of business is super important to me. And I've always thought that business is really a very, very personal thing. Even though people say, oh, it's not personal, it's business. No, everything about business, it's very personal because it's made by people. So I've always sort of fought that statement and focused a lot on the people side of things, or the human side of things. When we build a campaign, when we tell a story, when we create a design, even the clients that we work with, to me, it has always been very important to know the person behind the business that I'm working with. What do you stand for? What are your values? What do you want to do with this business? If it's just to make money, I'm out, because a lot of people can help you do that. I am more interested in working with
You
people.
specifically have chosen to, and I think that's a very important point to make, that you have said, no, thank you. Even though the client is your source of money, you were just like, that's not really good luck to you, but that's not.
Yeah, it doesn't. And it took me a minute. In the beginning, I worked with whoever offered me jobs because that's what we needed. And it's not a matter of, oh, I'm super rich now and I don't need them anymore. That's, I wish that was the case. That's not the case. But it's more the work that we do as artists is very personal. And you are putting a part of yourself and your knowledge and your feelings and your craft and your creativity in everything that you do. That's why we're so territorial with our creative work. So I would hate for my work to be out there doing something negative, or having, my name associated with something that I don't believe in. So I started seeing things like that happen, or, seeing clients maybe not being so transparent with the way they do business, or even not being very ethical with the way they handle our relationship. And it took me a while to realize that I like to sleep at night, like fully 8 hours in peace, and wake up in a great mood. And for me to be able to do that, I have to be in alignment with my values and my ethics. And for me, integrity is one of my top priorities. So whenever I found myself working with clients that didn't share that, it was horrible to work. So I was not happy. The team was not happy. The client was not happy either, because I kept asking and trying to do things that they were not ready for, and the other way around. So it became, it's not toxic, but it wasn't a positive relationship in the end. And that affects the work. So why be in a position that it's uncomfortable or you don't want to be in? And for every client that doesn't align with your values, there's another one that does. It's just a matter of looking into that and asking the right questions and having the guts to say no.
Yeah. Which that leads me to then, this is such an easy conversation. I'm just going one to the next. So how do you network to find more? How do you find more clients? And this is, remember, that to a matter of speaking to a bunch of students who are going to be out there pretty soon. I don't know if they should jump right into freelance as their only business before they get a little bit more experience, but how do you network?
Yeah,
I
wouldn't jump into freelancing right away, just because I don't know if it's you guys' experience, but when I first graduated, I was so excited about my career and what I could do with it and everything I learned, and I wanted to change the world. And I feel that if I had jumped right into having to take care of all the things that have nothing to do with my craft, I would have gotten super bored and super jaded and would have resented my work, because running your own business is very stressful and it's a lot of work. And sadly, the least of the work that I do is creative now, because I have to run the business. So while my team gets to play the entire time, I don't have that luxury. If I had started that way, I probably would have quit years ago.
Yeah.
Because it's exhausting. I had the chance to play my first years in the industry and work with amazing clients and learn so much of the things that they don't teach you in school. And, you know, the day-to-day, the working with other people that don't share your same ideas, the getting used to your clients saying no for no reason that you possibly understand or agree with, but you just have to live with it, the not taking the feedback personal, the competing with other agencies, the realizing that maybe somebody else did a better job than you, and you have to be okay with that and learn and adapt. And I don't think I would have gotten that experience working on my own. I miss that sometimes still. That I don't get to sit and just brainstorm with a bunch of really creative people all the time. I know it's a magical experience. I don't get to do it very often and I miss it terribly. So I would definitely, you know, test the waters, also to realize what you want to do. My first job at an agency was in accounts. I know. I thought that's what I wanted to do, because when I went to school, I did mass media communications and I wanted to do PR and marketing, and I wanted to be the accounts person with the fancy outfits and like going to dinner with the clients. I thought that's what I wanted.
How long did it take you to figure out that you wanted to be on the creative side?
About not even a year. But what happened is I stayed late, as we always used to do.
We always do.
Creative, trying to get things approved. And then I started pitching ideas, because it happened more than once. It was already 8 o'clock at night and we still had nothing. And the day that was next day, and you had the client like in their desk, like waiting. And I started pitching ideas, and then my idea started getting approved. And then the VP of creative called me one day into his office. He said, "You're in the wrong job." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're in the wrong job. We need to get you to creative like tomorrow." So it became a fight between my boss in accounts and the VP in creative, because they both wanted me in their departments. And I had no idea what to do, because I liked my job at the time. Yeah. But I spent all my time with creative, so I was super torn. And then everybody was like, "Just give it up. You're not an accounts person." I'm like, "But I'm really good at it." "But it's not your thing. You're better at this." But I bet that's how I made the switch.
But I bet you were the best one to sell in your creative.
That's the thing. I was good at both things. So I was I was the rare creative that was friends with accounts, which never happened.
Well, excuse me, how important, telling the students who are in the groups now, how important is that to be able to sell your work, to be able to explain yourself, to be able to go in and be, you know, either at work in an agency or your work, you know, on your own, or an interview or any of that, being able to walk in and be able to pimp yourself? Like, what do you have?
That's half the job. Because you could have the best campaign ever. If you don't know how to sell it, nobody's going to buy it.
Right.
And it's not easy, because again, it's rare to be able to do both, but because most artists are artists. So they're not going to sit there and try to spill strategy and talk about, and you don't have to. That's why when you work on a team, you have accounts people that help you do that, or you have strategy people that help you do that. But people don't live in our heads. So they have no idea what our thought process was to create this idea, and why we chose that color, and why we chose that font, and why this is working. So we have to be able to explain it to them. And that will happen whether you work in an agency or whether you work for yourself. You constantly have to convince your client that what you're telling them is the way to go.
By way of their marketing objectives and all that stuff, and speak in their
when your client comes to test, make the logo bigger. You're like, "But you don't need to, but I want the logo bigger." And it's just, you breathe and you explain it again. And it's a process, and you show examples, and then you rationalize the very, very artistic thing you just put together and try to explain it in a way that they understand it. Because again, they are not creative. So trying to explain art to not artistic people is a challenge. So if you want all of your ideas to get approved, you need to get very good at that. And there's a lot of storytelling. And I tell that to my students. And whenever we have student competition, that's usually what lacks in most teams is they have a great campaign, they don't know how to sell it. They just tell you the creative concept in the beginning and you're like, but where's the surprise? Like you build up to, and this is the campaign that we created. And this is the, you don't title your presentation with your creative concept. And then, because then it's so boring after that. So you have to make the build up, tell the story. And that's what creatives are good at. So it's a mix of finding the best way to tell the story that's going to convince the other person that you're it. And that's what they need to do.
Actually, we have a couple people in the group here that was on the very first AdFed student competition team for A-State. I didn't lead it, don't get mad at me. But even though I've done it way back in the past. Yeah, it was their first time. They didn't know what they were doing, but that's a good thing. They did a great job though. That came out wrong. They didn't have a lot of guidance as far as, this was the first one going through. They didn't have
Nobody
any
does.
people.
Unless you've done it before, you're flying in blind.
Yeah. And no matter who's there, faculty to help you, it doesn't But so that's a good thing for them to know, is a matter of, storytelling. Like that's a great way to lead any, whether it's student competition or a pitch to a client.
And for whatever project you're putting together, you have to convince the other person. And the best way to do that is to tell the story, your why, and don't be afraid to get emotional about it, or, tell the truth of why you thought about this. Because at the end of the day, that insight that you found is what's going to connect with the other person. And it's the only way they're going to say yes. And always have an insight for your work, and always have a creative concept, not just throw pictures and text over it just for the sake of it. Everything has to be extremely intentional, because everything you put on a piece of design, whether it's audiovisual, whether it's print, whether it's digital, will send a message, whether you like it or not. You can't control it. So it's best if you choose it wisely in a way that it says whatever you want it to say, not whatever you leave to chance, because then that's when bad design happens, when you don't think intentionally about what you're putting out there.
And for anybody who's watching in the group, even though I come from the advertising world and then went into design, this is also this is all design. This isn't just like us talking in our little ad agency world. This is design. It is communication. It's visual communication. Right? That's
anything from designing a business card to putting together a movie. I mean, anything creative and design wise has to be there for a reason, because everything communicates, all of it. Even where you put the credits, or whether you put them or not, or the font that you choose, the size, everything has to be taken into account, because the devil's in the details, and the great advertising also is in the details. The great art is also in the details. Even if you don't go into advertising, if you go into game design, if you go into architectural design, if you go into wardrobe, fashion, any kind of design, everything has to be there for a reason, not an afterthought that because even if you're designing a piece of furniture, it's not an afterthought how the legs of the table are going to be placed, or how they're going to be designed, or what shape they're going to have. So everything has to be intentional. And when you do your work that you love, that should come easy to you. Yes. And if it doesn't come natural, then make a checklist until it does.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's a good idea. I love checklists. So something that you've mentioned a lot in stuff that you've been, in your own publicity is empathy.
Yes.
The importance of empathy.
Very important.
Get on your soapbox. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So being empathetic is being able to put yourself in another person's shoes, which is something we all desperately need to do all the time. And I know for some people it's harder than others. Some people are born with it. It's a natural quality that they have. Some people are taught from a very early age how to do that. Some people are not, but it is a choice to develop. It's a skill. So even if it's something that you don't know a lot about, or you don't know how to do that, if you practice, like anything, if you practice it enough, it becomes a thing. So it's a habit that you can definitely create. And in the work that we do specifically, it is very important because you need to think like your audience to be able to connect with them. So you won't be able to connect with your ideal client or with your ideal audience if you don't even know what they like, how they feel, how they're going to react. Because for as much as I like Black, I can't make everything Black, because what if my audience in this specific scenario doesn't connect with that? So it's not about us, which is a very big thing with artists and designers. We tend to do what we want or what we like because the art comes from us. But when we are in a space like design, yes, all that is valuable and it's great, but you have to constantly think about the other person. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, your design is just a pretty piece of art, but it doesn't do its job, which is to communicate something and to connect with the other person. So if you're not able to open up and put yourself in the other's shoes, then the chances of you having a successful connection start to decrease. And that's a lot of what empathy is supposed to do, not just in our work, but in life. I think if we all were empathetic, we would avoid a lot of the troubles that we have in the world today, in general.
Yeah, that's for sure. And yeah, the not only being a better person, but the empathy. I like, it's not just, well, I'm going to read my rationale about, this says what the audience does, this is the demographic, and this is the psychographic, and blah, blah, blah. But you're like, yeah, but then what is it like to be in their shoes? Like to really,
and that will make you a better communicator and a better human being, period. Right. So practice it.
Practice it. It's good.
It's magical.
What was that?
It's magical.
Yeah. Once you start realizing. On a list of questions, something that a student did ask was, what challenges are there designing within more than one? We're just going to start with just language, and like, I've designed more than one language, but I only knew one of the languages, and the rest of it was like, here's my best translation I got online. Like, you understand, intimately the two languages, and you can also stretch that out to culturally, obviously, if you'd like.
Well, I would say one of the big thing is, I know Google Translate has gotten a lot better, but it's still not ideal. No. Because here's the thing, most of those, and that's what happens when you translate or try to translate something just literally to just get it done. Not just with Google Translate, with any other translation tool, or maybe with somebody that doesn't really know the language, is that you miss context. And when you miss context, then you miss the message. It's not, I always tell my friends, like, sometimes a joke for me, like, I'm better at telling jokes in Spanish than in English, because it comes more natural to me. And there's some nuances that I just can't seem to get right in English. Like, I'm way funnier in Spanish. So those types of things happen in any work that we do as well. It's like, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen a foreign film, but it's never the same to listen to the film in their original language and then have subtitles than to have some weird translation that you can tell it does, the emotion factor of it, it's never the same. It's never the same. No matter how good the voiceover actors are, you lose something. Right. Always. Yeah. So it is a challenge. That's why I think it's important that when we do things like that, or we want to, create some work for a culture that we're not a part of and that we maybe not understand well enough, that we reach out to somebody that does, and ask questions and show and get feedback, and does this work? Because there's a lot of nuances that we sometimes miss, even in Spanish. And this happens to me a lot. People assume we're all the same in Latin America, and we're extremely different from one country to another. So an ad that might work for Central American people might not work for my country. And I do not connect. Like, that means nothing to me. I do speak the same language. Let's say we're all Latin American, but I do not connect with that. And then you lose me. So we do have to be very mindful of really who we're talking to, so that we can tell a story that connects with them graphically, with audio, whatever form of design we're working with. It has to be authentic and it has to have context so that it really connects. If not, it's going to be a mess. And then that's just a waste of your work.
Yep.
Or it could create an incident, which we really don't want.
Yeah.
So, accept that you don't know and ask, and, test and check and double check and triple check and bring somebody in that does know what they're doing. Because you do want to make sure that you get it right.
Yeah, before my career in academia, when I was only working in ad agencies, I know that if it was just like a translation of some rules, then you could Google Translate that. But if it was anything else, the big brands, oh no, we paid a lot of money to have proper translators, not just some sort of app, because of all the nuances and all of the.
And that's the key. Yeah, the nuances.
Let alone the
Because
visuals, we probably missed the visuals.
Spanish, we have too many words. We have so many words. So there probably is a very specific word for what you're trying to say, which I love about English, where you have concepts that are all encompassed in one word. We don't have that. We use all the words to explain it. And there are a lot of words in English that I'd never know how to translate, because it's a whole mood in one word. You know what I mean? And I would need like a paragraph to explain that in Spanish.
It's also probably, I would assume it's as most, I only know French and I tried Spanish and couldn't do it, but it's so poetic though, isn't it? Isn't it beautiful, the language, Spanish? Like when you're
I will always agree with that statement. But other than that, no, there's a lot of things that people usually don't pay attention to, and could completely change the feeling of the piece that you're creating. And of course, that goes to imagery and colors and what color means here and there. And
which, by the way, on a side note that none of my students are going to care about right now, I'm going to totally hit you up and have you read an article that I luckily I got it published, but it was specifically a checklist about cross-culturally, and like, for example, with the Latinx community, and hopefully I didn't step all over and say the wrong thing, but like collectivist versus individualist cultures, like Latinx is much more collectivist, and also yes, the meanings of certain colors and stuff like that. So I don't know, I'm gonna have you read that and totally.
Yeah, oh, please do. And all those sorts of details, are important. And it goes back to just being very mindful for your target audiences. If you want to nail whatever you're doing, it has to adapt to your ideal target audience. If not, it's not going to work. So you need to really know your target audience.
And like, even as you said, colors, that's another reason, just so you guys know, if you're ever in a job and someone says, well, just translate that. Don't get on Google Translate. Don't get on something like colors always mean this. Really? No, they don't. Try that color red across a couple cultures, Yeah.
That's the most obvious one. And yes, please. I mean, I know people might think it doesn't really matter. It really does. Because a lot of those reactions are not even conscious.
Yeah.
So I might be looking at somebody's design and I don't even know why I hate it, or why it makes me feel a certain kind of way, positively or negatively. I won't always, and especially if you're not a designer or designer adjacent or have a designer in your family, you're not going to understand why you don't like it. You're just going to have a reaction to it. You're not going to start thinking, oh, the color, because my family at this point, we're all designers in my family. Well, I mean, my brother and I are designers. My parents are engineers, but at this point, they could almost be called designers. Like, they critique things in a way that makes no sense for an engineer to do. But again, they have been trained by us, but most people don't know how to explain it. Right. But they will still have a reaction, and you want to make sure that it's the reaction you want them to have.
Yeah. Which, speaking of that aspect, now, does your company do a lot of like prototyping and, the UI UX aspect of stuff, or do you not do as much of that? I was just thinking about.
Not really. We do more of the visual side of the websites, and we do a lot of coding and development, but we don't specialize in user interface or user interactions yet.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future, I don't know. But we've done a bunch of rebrands, which have been interesting because that's a whole transformation of things. And a lot of our clients lately have been multicultural as well. So we've had to design things that have to appeal to everybody in a very specific way without it being specific, if you know what I mean.
So now that's, yeah. And and by the way, when you say rebrand, you mean the visuals rebranding, right? They're not completely changing their position. Okay. And yeah, so how do you be everything without being therefore nothing? You know, how do you be that so corporate modernist clean that you're like universal and also I have no personality? Like, how do you do that?
I would say stick to what you have in common. So we have, for example, we have one of our clients, it's a multicultural networking group for women, for expat women from all over the world that live in the US. So they have people from literally all over the world that are members of this group. And we had to create a brand that spoke to all of them. Which, we just took what they all have in common and really went and spoke to how universal the group is and how encompassing it is. So if you go to our website, it's called Women of the World Network. We got an award, 2 awards actually, for their work last year, for their brand identity design and for their brand identity campaign. And it was a complete challenge because we had to be all the things and none of the things specifically at the same time. And still be feminine, but not too girly and, modern enough so that everybody can connect and you can have members of all ages. So it's not just for teenagers or just for grown women. So it was a challenge, but it's one of my favorite projects at this point we've created. So that became their umbrella brand. And then we created 3 sub brands underneath that follow the same overall line, but are different in their own right. But if you see them together, you can totally tell they're siblings.
Yeah.
Or they're come from the same family. So it has been a lot of fun to work with them because it's been a challenge for us. And we've loved seeing the results and how much everybody loves it. Like it was like a total home run.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So I just noticed this has flown by this time, and usually I open up for questions by now, but not yet, guys. I'm not done with her yet. So, what would your main advice be to students who are about to graduate soon, design students?
Well, I would tell you. So my biggest thing all the time, always, is if you don't find the opportunities that you want, you just make them happen. If they're not there, you create them in any way, shape, or form that you can. Of course, within reason, within your means, within what's possible. I'm not, empty saying like, believe in your dreams and all that stuff, which sounds great, but sometimes it's not realistic. I do believe in what you want, but that's how I've been able to get almost everything I've set out to do is just, it doesn't exist, I'm going to make it. Or trying to find something similar and change it into whatever I want. Because there's space for everybody. So if you really want to be one very specific type of designer, and there has to be a way for you to be able to do that, even if it's segueing into other things. So don't let whatever's out there dictate what you want to be just because it hasn't been invented yet, or because it's not common, or because not a lot of people do it. If it doesn't exist, then you create it.
And what about for students who are either by choice or because they have to, for example, stay in what we call the Delta region, which is where the students you're talking to right now. So along the Mississippi River, Jonesboro area to Little Rock, Arkansas area, either by choice or need to stay in that area. Like,
one thing I've learned after I moved here to the US which I didn't think it was important before, but it was because it was part of my life, is you need to meet people. And your network is going to be extremely helpful. Whenever I moved here, I remember the first time I went to a networking event. Oh God, I hated it. So it was so horrible for me. Because in Venezuela, networking is not a thing. I mean, yes, you have connections and you have friends, and it's kind of natural to have that relationship situation happen,
Social
but
culture.
it's not an industry. Here, it's an industry. Like, people live off of that. I had never seen that before. So when I got here and people told me, oh, you have a business or you're a freelancer or whatever, you need to network. And I'm like, I need to what? Yeah, you need to like go to an event and meet a bunch of strangers on a daily basis. And I was like, I need to what? And I'm not, I can be an introvert sometimes. I might be an extrovert other times, but it still was horrible to me in the beginning that I had to go and like talk to strangers and sell myself. I'm not a salesperson. I'm a creative. What do you mean I need to go sell myself? It was so weird for me. It was so uncomfortable. And I remember the first time I did it, I got in the car and I said, okay, I'm going to be here for 45 minutes. And then I'm going to go home. And I put an alarm on my phone. And I'm like, I'm going to be here for 45 minutes. I'm going to hand out 15 business cards. I'm going to go. And I did exactly that. I met people. I stayed 45 minutes, got in my car, drove back home. And I was like, oh my God, that was horrible. I felt so awkward. It was just, and then the more I did it, it sort of became, and the moment I understood, it was not about selling myself. It was just about meeting other humans that are probably in the same point that you are, trying to get things done and try to. Then I started just having, and I wouldn't even sometimes hand out business cards. It was just, I will take theirs and then we'll connect. And some people I never saw again. Some people are great friends today, which I had never thought about before. And it is weird. Yes. It might be awkward sometimes. Very much so. But it's all about how you approach it. The moment I changed my approach to it and stopped dreading it and just saw it as taking the pressure out of it, just saw it as an opportunity to meet more people and connect on whatever we have in common. If we don't have anything in common, then I would move on and just do it over again. Those places, those people are the network that I have today that has helped me grow my business, that has helped me, get opportunities that I would have never been able to done before. Won awards that I had never even applied to before. The first time I applied for an award is because somebody I met at a networking event told me to. It didn't even occur to me. I'm like, what do you mean go to, like, what? He's like, oh, your work is really good, you should. And I'm like, oh, and then I did it and it happened. And I would have never thought about that. So get out there in whatever way, shape, or form you're comfortable with.
Like joining the local ad fed or AIGA.
That is a great idea. That has helped me so much. Like, I've met so many people, and you would think, oh, because we're all in the industry, we compete with each other. Yes and no. Not everybody does the same. Not everybody does it the same way. Not everybody works with the same industry. And at the end of the day, if you want to work with someone that shares, I'm all about collaborating instead of competing with each other. And I try to gravitate to other people that think the same way. I don't want to hang out with people that are sharks and out to get other accounts and like steal clients. I don't do that. So I don't hang out with people like that. But the only way to know that is to hang out with people and be able to identify them and ask questions and, ask for help. I ask for help all the time. I didn't before. I do now. Shamelessly, I go ask for what I want.
Yeah.
The worst thing that can happen, they say no, I lost nothing. 5 minutes of my time.
Right.
But most of the time, I've always gotten a yes. People are willing to help. If you come from an honest point, if you come, authentically, and if you're open and say, hey, I need help. I want this. I don't know how to get it. I'm just starting. Can you introduce me to someone? I really want to get this done. What's the best way to do that? We've had people start, volunteering with the Advertising Federation. And then that leads them to connect with a lot of people that might get them a job in the future, or that could be a great connection for whatever. And volunteering is going to be key. If you don't feel you're in a space to network, you can network volunteering with other people. So there's multiple ways to do it. I would just say, I know it's scary, do it anyway. Put a timer on it, ask a friend to fake call you with an emergency and get out of there if you're not feeling it. But you have to try it. And if there's not a space that you feel is what you want, try to find a way to create it. Other people that think like you will gravitate towards that. And try to get together, try to find other people to help you. None of what I've done by myself. It's always been with somebody else in some way, shape, or form.
I think that's a wonderful ending point to the recording, but not ending point to this. So I'm going to stop the recording for the public aspect. And then, so it is.